All right, folks. We got quite the morning planned for you. We've got a lot to talk about. David, just get a little bit closer to me. Just a little bit. There we go. Get you in the shot a little closer. We are going to talk about the wagons in the Middle East circling. And they are circling, and they are really, truly, I say the wagons are circling, but the drain, the drain is circling, okay? It is getting ugly right now, and we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on. Before we do that, by the way, we're going to talk about the state of Israel. We're going to talk about what's happening in the Middle East. We're going to talk about some of the dynamics that are going on with which I'm going to talk about a little bit more at length, a meeting that Putin had with MBS regarding OPEC Plus.
When was this?
This was this last week.
Okay.
Right? So that's a significant story in and of itself. To me, just unbelievable. I mean, that in and of itself is crazy. So we're going to talk about that. And everything else that comes our way. I'm going to play video for you, by the way. I'm going to probably start with this video. Mm-hmm. It's reprehensible. It's literally disgusting. It is really, really ugly. And it just shows how disgustingly brainwashed not only is academia, but how absolutely dark, evil, and anti-Semitic they are. They are Satan worshipers. And I'm serious. I mean, these people worship the devil.
The Congressional hearing?
I'm going to show you a portion of the Congressional hearing. I am. It's going to make you sick. And everybody that's watching is going to be made sick as a result of this. But I do want to say this. Rumble appears to be down right now, so we can't see any activity going on Rumble. They did get hacked. I don't know what the exact story is, but we should get more details as that information gets released. In the meantime, I do want to thank Brad. You're the first super chat. You say God's promises are eternal. Genesis 12 is just as true today as it was in Abraham's day. That's the word, and that's right. And the word don't lie. And you're right about that. Mr. Red, you say, your Real Talk video yesterday, I wish I was on the national emergency broadcast because it is urgent and emergency that Christ could come at any second, and non-believers and fence hoppers need to hear that video and wake up. Well, thank you. Yeah, that video was motivated by, it's just a long story. That video that I did yesterday was motivated by something that I observed where, without getting into a lot of details, it became very obvious that yet another guy in ministry was cheating on his wife. And ugly story. I don't even have to get into the details with it. It's just nasty. But it's sad when you begin to see people covering up that nonsense because they're trying to preserve reputations and empires that they're trying to build and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just disgusted by people like that. I think they're equally as dirty, by the way. That's a whole other story. And that's what motivated that video yesterday that got released.
You know that I was out in the desert for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Among other things, and not everything, but among other things was growing up inside the church and seeing all of this happening.
Oh.
And not really being able to put it together. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's not forget, the greatest of all the Davids was somebody who did something like that too.
I know.
So we need to.
But you're talking. But I'm kind of glad you brought this up because let me just push through this a little bit, fast forward this a little bit. By the way, Emilia, thank you so much. Look, I want to make myself very, very clear. The people that were involved in this little situation was nothing like King David. Now, don't get me wrong. King David could be looked at as a homewrecker, a murderer, a liar,
all of the above.
Disloyal, not a patriot. He betrayed his country in essence. We know that he did that on multiple occasions, right? But there was something about the heart of David that loved God, that when God confronted him with the matters, he didn't harden his heart and continue to move forward in a way where he was trying to cover up the wickedness that he was doing, right? He did that initially.
Fell on his knees.
Yeah, he came and he repented. So the idea here is that his desire was to be right in the eyes of God, right? And I don't see anything like that. I just look at and I admire men like that. What I don't admire is I don't admire men that are so narcissistic that in essence, they don't care if they get caught. What they care about is the effects of them getting caught. And that's kind of where they're at. And it's such a dark, wicked place to be. It's wicked.
So David did these things and repented. Okay. And again, is repenting enough, or should we hold somebody accountable to that? And I'm sorry to say, though, that we're seeing a lot of this all over the church in a lot of different places.
Well, look, I think that I think that there's a situation right now, as things sit, in the place that we're in right now, where when somebody repents, yes, you forgive them, right? But I also think that there's a point where they disqualify themselves from doing the work that they're supposed to do. Think about it like this: if a man cannot have the trust of his wife, the one that he vows before God, right, to be faithful to, how in the world can he be trusted to do the work of the ministry? He can't. He can't.
And here is a bigger question, but I think we got a couple more fishes to fry here.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But yeah, go ahead, bro.
So where are we going today?
Okay, so a couple of things. The first thing is we need to talk about what's going on right now in Israel. So let's get a quick update on what's happening. We'll start there, and then we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper into everything else that we're actually seeing and what's actually going on here.
I'll start this off. Can you pull up a map, see if we can kind of point at some of the places in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, what map do we need to pull up?
Just a map of the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
And we'll talk about what is going on the ground right now. Israel is inside the Gaza Strip with what we call armored groups that are a combination of tanks, infantry, engineering, and very close support with the Air Force. So you've got a command group which has probably a couple of tanks, a company of infantry, a couple of squads of engineering, and they're inside in different places inside the Gaza Strip. That's a good map of the Gaza Strip because we can kind of connect to all of what we need to talk about right now. And I think we talked about this last week when we're here, but 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm going to go over that in just a second. I have to switch over here. So let's go over. Here we go. Okay.
So the Israeli forces have more or less dealt with what's happened in Gaza City itself, and you can see the big red thing that's Gaza City right there. But if you look to the north of Gaza City, there's Jabalia, and to the north of that is Beit Lahia, and those are areas where the fighting is being going on. Jabalia is a refugee camp, and let's see if I can explain. Gaza was Egyptian until 1967. In 1967, though, Israel conquered the Gaza Strip. A lot of people that actually lived in other parts of Israel moved into the Gaza Strip. So a lot of people forget that half of the people living in the Gaza Strip are Egyptians from Egypt. And the ones that moved in were put in camps in the Gaza Strip. The Jabalia is one of the camps, so that becomes a hotbed of Palestinian Hamas things. And so we are kind of right now finishing off destroying all of the Hamas infrastructure in Jabalia. We're finishing off the infrastructure in Beit Lahia and Sajaiya, which are on the northern side, and now go down on the map, and let's go down to the southern part. The southern part of the Gaza Strip is where things are happening. I think the intense fighting is happening right now, mostly in Khan Yunis. Khan Yunis, you see right there in the middle, is the main refugee camp, and according to some of the rumors, Sinwar is in Khan Yunis right now. Israel has surrounded Khan Yunis, but has not gone in decisively to each and every one of the different buildings. So somewhere underneath Khan Yunis, we think is the center of the Hamas leadership. And if you go down and look to the left, you can see Rafiah and the border crossing over into Egypt. Okay, so more and more of the residents of Gaza have moved towards the south, and there's a feeling that when we finish off dealing with the Hamas and Khan Yunis, that might be the breaking point that everybody is talking about.
Yeah. Now, I heard this, David. You tell me if there's any truth to this, but I do hear that Rafah, there may be a significant problem waiting for Israel in Rafah, only because of the tunnel system that many people know go into potentially so far into Egypt that it goes into the big mosque that's on the border there of Gaza.
Okay, so you can see the border with Egypt there.
Yeah.
Okay, and yes, there are probably hundreds, if not more, tunnels that actually cross the border underground between there.
Yep.
So theoretically, I mean, maybe the Hamas leadership is going to be aiming for those tunnels in order to get out. By the way, they might make it out of the Gaza Strip. That would be an interesting. If Sinwar does get out of the Gaza Strip, then what happens?
Well, so there's a lot of speculation, right? If he does, let's just say he which, by the way, I don't know of any intelligence that shows the existence of any tunnels that go so far south from Khan Yunis that it goes into Rafah. Now, I do know
he's going to have to come up from underground.
Yeah, my understanding is if he does come up from underground, that the one way that he could potentially do it, I'm not saying walking away from detection, but there's a lot of suspicion that they say, and I don't know if you heard this, but these tunnels that are in Khan Yunis go under the Nasser hospital. Mm-hmm. They go all the way west. To the beach. So I don't know if that's the case, because I do know, we know this because we confirmed this earlier in some of the recent raid operations, right? When we go to further north, when they went into this area in Habala, when they came over here and they found many tunnels that came over. As a matter of fact, we just recently flooded some of those tunnels. Israel just recently flooded some of those tunnels, correct?
Totally.
So if they stick to the consistency with their behavior, then undoubtedly he has to have some kind of tunneling system that's over here, which creates a real problem in the Mediterranean, because there's a lot of question about how the Mediterranean becomes or is going to be secured. If anybody if they even make it out that way. I mean, I guess my question is, do we have any IDF on the shore?
Oh yeah.
Right.
So we do now. You've got the Navy offshore, and nothing's going to get off of there. That's the easiest part. We know that in order to get from Gaza to Khan Yunis, he used the humanitarian road, and he went down with a humanitarian convoy. We already know that he kind of embeds himself in humanitarian assets in order to move around. He might try to do the same thing to get to Rafah, to Rafah itself, and from there underground into Egypt, into the Sinai. But let's make this clear: the Egyptians are after him as much as we are.
No, the Egyptians. Listen, come on. With everything that happened in Shuat al-Tahrir and all, I mean, he had a big hand to do with it. Well, him and the Clintons, they had a big hand to do with what happened in Shuat al-Tahrir. So of course, Egypt has really a need to, and we all know the story with Al-Sisi, and we know everything that's. So definitely, there is undoubtedly. Egypt does not have any interest in seeing him going any further south. I get that. But Rafah is still a problem.
Yeah. But I want, maybe this is a good conversation for me and you to have, is about what about the people of Gaza? Let's say Israel gets its hand on Sinwar tomorrow and he is either killed in action or put in chains and dragged back to Israel. One of the two. Okay? Will the people of Gaza say that's enough? And
let me tell you what's going to happen. You're familiar with history. You're very good with history, especially military history. So you understand the dynamic here. This is a part that's off the history books that you're very familiar with, that most people will not be familiar with. And that is when we had happen in 73 take place and everything in 73 finished. And there was a lot of tanks, by the way, involved in the 73 war. Yep. And it was ugly, right? Ask Ariel Sharon. Well, you can't now, but you get the idea, right? The thing that's interesting about what happened in 73 is it left a gap in the Sinai that the Jews didn't really know until later. They didn't understand it. Sadat knew it.
Yeah.
He understood it. The concern with what had happened in the Sinai, which, by the way, was for most people that know or don't know, the Sinai was, without a doubt, undoubtedly the first region in Egypt that was more receiving and open to to Jews only because of the dynamic with Sharm el-Sheikh and this whole area, right? But what a lot of people didn't know is on its face, it was one of the more hostile fronts to Israel. And the reason why is because the people of Egypt, okay, which I believe is the same area, we're going to deal with the same dynamic in Gaza. The people of Egypt in this region did not want to enter into any type of cooperative discussion or attributive behavior with Israel because they did not know if the forces that were, I'm not going to use the word oppressing, but that were heavily controlling the area of the Sinai were completely dealt with or not, right? In other words, look, when you started getting to the year 1978 and the peace treaty was made and so on and so forth, there was a lot of questions going on in people's mind as into, is this going to last? What's going to go on? When Sadat was assassinated, it may have been one of the most critical times in Egyptian history.
Let me give you an illustration that goes exactly where I think you're going. Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been on the Golan Heights with me.
Oh yeah, many times.
And on the Golan Heights, the people who inhabit the Golan Heights are a Muslim minority called the Druze.
Yeah, we know the Druze. Sure.
If you've been in Israel, you've seen the Druze on Mount Carmel, but there's a large contingency of Druze on the Golan Heights. And there's a large population of Druze inside Syria on their side of the border.
That's right.
And I've actually had this conversation with a good friend of mine who was a Druze, but a Druze not from Mount Carmel, because they serve in the military, but a Druze from the Golan Heights. And I'm saying, wait a minute. I mean, you're living better under Israel's rule than you've ever done down through the history. The Druze have prospered under Israeli rule. Why don't you buy in, or why don't you accept
I know where you're going here.
The Israeli authority here? And like the Druze that live inside Israel, you will be prosperous, you will serve in the military, you will be in our government and everything. And he says, David, you don't understand. These are the Golan Heights. Today they're Israeli. Once they were Syrian. They might be Syrian at some point, another time. He says, I'm going to be living here no matter who is here. And he says, with the Israelis, I'm not worried. I mean, even if we don't fire physically at you, you won't come against us. But if we show support for Israel while the Israelis are here, tomorrow this gets turned over to the Syrians, we will be executed for collaborating with the Israelis. So it's better for me as a Druze living here to be more pro-Syrian than it is to be pro-Israelis, because the Syrians will kill me, the Israelis will not.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, we had to go well into the mid 80s in order for that dynamic in Sharm el-Sheikh and the Sinai to fade off a little bit, right?
So think about the people living in Gaza.
That's
At the end
right.
of this, okay, something's going to change. Hamas is not going to be there, but will they be pro-Hamas till the last moment?
My guess is on its face they will, because they have to be. There's an embedding of people in Hamas that they don't. There's so much there that they don't have the liberty to just simply turn around on, right? Like I think of people like I keep forgetting his name. Ben Yusuf, the guy who's the son of, he calls himself Ibn Hamas, the son of Hamas.
Son of Hamas.
Okay. He's comfortable. He's comfortable doing what he's doing because he has a protection detail given to him by Israel, which we know, and that's rightly so. And he lives in the United States now. He's not even the concern that he has for his own life is nominal, because he's very committed to telling the truth. But this, you're going to see this. Look, let's take it back to the 67 war and go prior to 67 and look at the people living in Gaza. If you looked at the people living in Gaza prior to 67, 98% of those living in Gaza at the time were Egyptians.
Yep.
The other 2% was a very, very limited minority of other Arabs. You had a couple of Syrians that were living there, a very small minority of Syrians, and you had some Lebanese that were in there, but they were there taking foreign jobs, doing different things like that.
Yeah, but there were a lot of people who ran away from other parts of Israel and during the War of Independence in 1948 and set up shop inside Egyptian Gaza.
Yeah. But so let me back up for a second, right? when Egypt so quickly, in their minds, it was when Egypt so quickly gave up Gaza, right? In their minds, their thought was, we're already in trouble. We don't have a real national identity anymore. We're not technically Egypt. As a matter of fact, we're Egypt's redheaded stepchild. Egypt doesn't want anything to do with us. Israel is reluctantly participating in security activity with us, right? And there's it was the wild, wild west. It was absolutely crazy. So then when things finally begin to stabilize, ironically, they stabilize post 1973 when you really begin to see Jewish settlers commit to making that area what it used to be, or a little bit, making it better. So that's when we started seeing the advent of modern technology begin to really develop in Gaza. We begin to see all kinds of nice things happening over there. And then what happens is there's an uprising that takes place of at that moment, a minority of people, I think this is a very important word. It's a minority of people that wanted to take advantage of the nice infrastructure that had been developed. And through that very small group of people that had a very loud voice, a massive amount of Arabs began to immigrate back into there. Here's the statistic that a lot of people don't know. This is something most Jews that I talk to don't even know the statistic. 1967, how many Arabs are in Gaza? 80,000. 80,000 Arabs in Gaza.
At the end of the 6 Day War.
And at the end of the 6 Day War. Maybe 30,000 Egyptians. Big difference between Egyptians and Arabs. Okay? So think about this for a second. Now, in the modern day in which we live, you maybe have 5% in Gaza Egyptians, right?
And the rest are
0% Israeli. 0%. You have nobody. You don't have a single Israeli citizen.
We ethnically cleansed all the Jews out
completely ethnic cleansing, right? And now the number they believe, based on the things that they're seeing going into Gaza right now, is not 2 million. Now they're thinking closer to 2.8 million Arabs that are living in Gaza.
Where do they come from?
Well, let's take this a step further. Let's go back. When 1948 takes place, Israel's independence and everything happens in 1948. Here's another thing nobody knows. If you take into account even Gaza, you take into account the Golan Heights, you take into account the north, you take into account the area that was previously in possession of Lebanon, you take into account East Jerusalem. I mean, every part of Israel, the current borders that exist for Israel today, the amount of Arabs that you have total living in Gaza, this is everywhere, 110,000. 110,000 is the number that they believe. 110,000. Do you know how many now outside of Gaza? We're just outside of Gaza. We're just talking about Judea, Samaria, and some of the surrounding areas. 4 million. The belief is right now the total amount of Arabs that are living in Israel, Gaza included, Israel, is close to somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 million. 7 million. There are 9 million Jews that live. 9 million Jews that live in Israel.
Mm-hmm. And 9.5.
Give me a break. Are you kidding me? So there's a genocide that's going on?
Again, truth is not the issue here. And we've been seeing this again and again. But here's something maybe would be interesting to connect to while we're doing this. I saw a poll, I'm not even sure from who, but an international organization that said something like 78% of all of the Arabs support what Hamas did on the 7th of October.
Oh, it's a big number.
It's
a large number.
What I'm trying to say is the Arab world supports this. I saw a poll that said something like 70% of the people in Gaza, with all of their suffering, are still supporting Hamas.
Yeah, and so this is a very tough stat to go by because I have some good friends that are on they're on the forefront of fighting Islam, and one of the things that they're contending is this is Islam, this is what to expect, this is why you see an overwhelming majority of the Arab population believing this. It's true. It's overwhelmingly true. There is so much of this that is happening, right? The problem is there are leaders, very smart leaders in Arab nations that see the problem with this mindset. They understand. I'll give you a great example of this, right? MBS, Mohammed bin Shalamin, he's probably the greatest example of this, right? He knows he can't get to the economic goal that he has. He knows it. He cannot go there. He can't get to his goal unless he is able to affect a solid relationship, economically speaking, with Israel. Okay. He knows it. We've gone over the map.
But he knows that. Do his people know that?
I think an overwhelming majority of the educated people in Saudi Arabia understand it, especially with what the United States has done with the Houthis. Think of it like this. Right now, if you were to say that, let me just give that number. 78% of the Arab population said that what happened on October the 7th was good, okay? Let's just say that number is even the encapsulation of the view of those that live in Saudi Arabia, which I guarantee that number's smaller in Saudi Arabia. But let's just pretend that it was, okay? Let's pretend it's the same amount. The very moment that the United States of America chose to do what it did with respect to its foreign policy associatively valued with Israel, all of that changed. Every last bit of it changed. As a matter of fact, you like think about it like this. In Saudi Arabia, the prominent thought was our best interests for national security are going to be defended by the stand that the United States of America takes with respect to defending its greatest ally in the region, which is Israel, right? Well, when the United States of America basically says Israel is no longer our greatest ally by doing two major things, number one, declaring the Houthis in Yemen not to be enemy combatants, number one, and then number two, going back to Raisi and going back to Iran and basically saying, even though the sunset clause in the JCPOA has expired, we're still going to give you the JCPOA. We're going to work with you. The moment you say, I'm going to bed with Tehran, what do you expect Saudi Arabia to do? Saudi Arabia knows its national security interests are dead.
Has the United States woken up from this yet?
No way. Let me tell you why I say no way.
Then what's going to happen?
Let me tell you why I say no way. I say no way because Biden has doubled down on his position with Hamas. He said, we need to destroy Hamas. Okay, fair enough. But now his position is we need to destroy Hamas, but then we need to allow Mahmoud Abbas to be the ruler over Gaza.
Which is the dynamic of what's happening right now. There is a negotiation going on right now about who's going to step in.
I'm going to just say this really clearly. I'm going to make myself very, very clear. The Israeli government they are a fool. I'm going to make myself clear. They are stupid fools if they give Abbas the ability to control Gaza.
Well, now they're talking about something a little bit. They're talking about some kind of conglomeration, some kind of coalition between Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Abbas, or somebody instead of Abbas.
They cannot. I'm not to cut you off, David. I'm just saying this. They cannot give Abbas any footing. There hasn't been an election with Abbas in 15 years. Number one. Number two, we just take it further. I just translated a video. 500,000 people watched it. Mm-hmm. I just translated a video of Abbas basically saying that when the Jews were executed by Hitler, that they weren't executed because they were Jews, they were executed because they were bad people.
So I'm sorry to pull this back because this is what's been on my heart and my mind for a while. Okay, what about the people in Gaza who have just now gone through this terrible ordeal? Okay, these are the people. It's a
great question.
These are the people who have kicked Abbas out already. I mean, they're the ones who threw out the PLO and accepted the Hamas.
Yep.
These are the people who spit on the bodies of mutilated and raped women through the streets of Gaza. Okay, what's going to happen, or who will be able to rule these people or to run these people? Hamas is gone. And even if you do put some kind of government, I mean, a Western government, can a Western government rule these people? Because these
No.
people have been under a very totalitarian, very Islamic ideology.
Yep.
These are, 2 or 3 generations having school plays about mutilating and killing Jews. And what is going to happen there? What would these people need for this to be turned over in a different direction?
It's the wrong question, David. It sounds very cruel. It's the wrong question. And it's what you and the Jews continue to ask, and it's the wrong question. Many people in Israel are asking that question. I think it's the wrong question. I think the question that needs to be asked is the question that should have been asked before this whole thing started, right? And that is, what is it going to take in order to keep the Jewish people alive? That's the more important question, because that question stopped being asked with respect to Hamas, because somehow, some way, the Israelis thought we're going to be okay. Hamas is cooperating with us. This is not going to be a big deal. I think the question cannot be what is going to make a better life for the people that are living in Gaza. The bigger question has to be, how are we going to survive as Jews? And when you answer that question, you do whatever is necessary to keep the Jewish state alive, and eventually they're going to benefit from it. The problem that we have, and this is, look, you can do a case study in some of these Druze villages where you have these multimillionaires, or you do any of these case studies in these little tiny villages that are in deep in the heart of Jewish territory, right? Jewish land. When you sit down and you talk to those Arabs that are there, each and every single one of them will tell you, I'm not under the threat of any outside influence. I enjoy the protections of the state of Israel, and I have different...
I don't want to change that.
That's right, and we don't want to change it. I have different beliefs than them. I am Islamic. I believe in blah, 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 blah. My goodness, the one of the richest men in Israel is an Arab. He is the president of the largest bank in Israel.
Yep.
I think that right now Israel has to just say, what is it going to take for us to survive?
So let's go back and let me put Israel on the ground here, and I'm going to say this: we thought we could cooperate with them. By the way, and let's say for the sake of this part of the conversation, let's talk about the people in Gaza. I'm going to leave the people in the West.
Sure.
We thought we could cooperate, and we thought their wanting a better life will overcome their hatred.
Yep.
We were wrong. We realized that their hatred is more important to them and more embedded in them and more actual in them than a good life for them or their children or their grandchildren.
Yep.
So we've agreed to that. So the situation is, okay, we've got hatred, and we kind of figured they're going to hate us. I mean, we realized that we were wrong. That hatred is not going to disappear. What Israel is saying today, and I think the world hasn't really kind of connected to this, and I think this is a catchphrase maybe that we can kind of put it there, is that Israel realizes that they're going to hate us. We can't help that, but we need them to fear us more than they hate us.
Well, and
they need to be afraid of us.
Yeah, I think.
And not only do they need, sorry to cut you off, but not only do they need, but we need to show not only them, but the Hezbollah and the Iranians, okay, that they need to fear us. And I think this is, and the world, by the way, realizes this and is fighting against Israel to help to stop Israel and hold it back so the Arabs don't fear us enough. And I'm saying truthfully, the Arabs in the Middle East need to fear Israel right now more than they hate us. Otherwise, we won't, like you said, we won't be able to live in this neighborhood.
But David, I'm going to tell you this: that you are making the same mistake, and I'm being bold. I'm sorry, I'm being very bold. This is a very bold statement to make. You're making the same mistake that many people in the Knesset are making, and many people who are trying to get their head around foreign policy in Israel are making, and that's this. You're saying we have to put a fear in the hearts of these people.
Okay.
The premise of your mistake is based on the fact that you assume that they are going to have things that cause them to be fearful. Here's the idea, right? How do you instill fear in a person who was raised up to believe that the greatest honor they can have is being killed.
Okay, so what do they fear?
Allah. They fear nothing. The only thing that they fear is any kind of reprisal from Allah. This is the thing that, like, when 9/11 happened, okay? I had the honor of being able to sit down with several agents, federal agents, to explain to them the mindset of what happens in Islam and how they think. Because what was happening on 9/11 was they had these U.S. Marshals, these air marshals, that were going through these training programs. They were getting on airplanes, and they were basically, their whole goal was to protect an airplane from being hijacked and taken over, right? And the premise behind their training was very, very broken. The premise behind their training was, if I see a guy who looks like he's going to take over an airplane, then what I basically do is I approach them at gunpoint, and by approaching them at gunpoint on the plane, it will create a sense of duress that will cause them to cooperate. Okay, well, you erred in thinking that way. Here's the reason why you erred in thinking that way. 90% of the people that are out there will respond by putting their hands up because they don't want to lose their lives. But when you deal with a person who's been taught their whole life,
and he's on that plane to lose his life.
Yeah, who's on that plane to not only lose his life, but knows that if he does lose his life that way, he's got 70 virgins waiting for him and all kinds of other things. So the problem is, when you say we have to build fear in the hearts of Iran, and we have to build fear in Tehran, and we have to build fear in Gaza.
So what would change it? What would create fear? Let
me tell you, it's not about creating fear. Your mindset is we got to create fear in them so they stop it. It doesn't work that way.
What would bring about a surrender of the Hamas?
You have to break the cycle. You have to destroy them.
Okay.
Look, there's no other way of putting it. The idea here is you've got to go into a world of re-education, because the mindset that exists right now is, I'm going to do anything, as you know, Isma Allah. I'm going to do whatever I can to destroy a Jewish life, and it doesn't matter what it takes to do that.
So let's go back. Okay, when I say fear, I don't mean fear of physical death. Okay? And I think to a certain extent, what I've learned, again, dealing with some of them, they don't fear death, but they fear shame. And what Israel is doing to the Hamas right now is, in a neighborhood of bullies, okay, we're smacking the bully, the biggest bully around. We're smacking him down. And what that's going to do is going to cause all the other bullies to be afraid of not dying, not being smacked, but of being shamed.
Maybe.
And that's what I'm trying to, when I say fear, and this is what I'm thinking, okay? A person living in Gaza saw or thought this great Hamas, these are the great fighters, they were going to kind of change. They are the resistance they're fighting against, and they got, for lack of a better word, smacked. Okay? In every way, shape, or form, they're getting smacked. Not only that, I think the other side is realizing that Israel is willing to lose. And this is kind of weird, I know, to say it like this. Israel is willing to lose our young men and women that are on the front line right now in order to smack them.
Yep.
We're willing to go face to face, eyeball to eyeball, okay? And we're willing to use the same kind of force that we're doing. We just do it better than they do, more professional than they do.
Hands down.
And so they're getting smacked right now in a way. They're saying, wait a minute, I'm the great Arab people. I'm the great Muslim people. I'm speaking in the name of Allah. And look what happened. I am failing. And I think that is a fear that we need to put in their hearts.
Yeah. All that does is motivate them more, David.
Really?
All that does is motivate them more. They shamed us. You know what? Isma Allah, we're coming back. We are going to reclaim. As a matter of fact, the Quran teaches them that. The Quran teaches them that if they are in a country that can overpower them, that in essence, they don't talk about shame being in that. What they basically say is they say lie. That's what they say. They say deceive, basically do what Hamas did over the last couple of years.
So what is going to break the cycle?
What's going to break the cycle? This sounds crazy, but it's true. What's going to break the cycle is you do what any other country would do to defend their interests. You go in there and with force, you stop it. With fury, you stop it. You set up the security perimeters. You make the place as safe as it can possibly be. Eventually, the cycle will be broken if you maintain a consistent security pattern. You're never going to be able to defeat Islam.
No, we're not going to.
But Islam wants to destroy the Jews.
But look, Egypt has come and made peace with us. Jordan has come and made peace with us. Not because they love us. And believe me, if you go down, and if I sit in Tahrir Square today and say I'm Israeli, okay, I will probably be lynched even today.
Listen, if I go to Shwara Tahrir right now and I say my last name, I'll get lynched. Okay, I mean, it's
really?
well, I mean, Kaddis means saint in Arabic, but my grandfather was a very famous preacher.
There you go.
So, I mean, look, Shwara Tahrir is probably the whole reason why everything happened in Shwara Tahrir was because of its visibility and the notoriety that it had in what we would call Masri Jadida in the newer portion of Cairo. But beside the point, that's just beside the point. Egypt did what it did because Egypt recognized, the leaders of Egypt recognized, right, that there was no way they were going to be able to further the prosperity of their nation had they not done that, right? So there were leaders that steered that direction, and I get it. The Islamic contingency that exists in Egypt are amongst some of the most radical, right? We know that. Islamic Brotherhood, they created Hamas. Well, you know what? Look, the United States of America helped to do that as well, bolster it. And even Israel took a position in helping the position of Hamas, thinking that Hamas would deal with the bigger enemy at the time.
It was
right?
a mindset, by the way. Even your president, when he became president, the first thing he went to do is went and sat in the middle of the Islamic world in Egypt and said, "I'm sorry for what we did."
I know.
So again,
he's a Muslim himself. He was a Muslim himself.
Okay, I'm going back. I'm going back to Muhammad, who's living in Khan Yunis right now.
Yep.
And you know, everything's blowing up around him. Okay, he's on the top of the ground, but he knows that his leadership is underground and is holed up like dogs. And what is he saying to himself right now?
No, listen. There are questions in his mind, undoubtedly, right? I think this is just my view. If you have any chance at fixing this problem, there's three things you have to do, right? The first thing you have to keep in mind is that God says no one's ever going to pluck Israel out of their land again. We know that. Amos says that. We have the promise, so that's not happening. So we just have to recognize that. That's number one. Number two, you have to control it by force. You have to. There's no other way around it. You absolutely have to do it. The third thing that has to happen, this is just my opinion, is these guys have to get exposed to a different way of life. They need to hear the gospel.
But it has to be done out of strength. And here's the main.
You can't do it any other way.
Here's the main thing that one of the things that we in Israel were talking about a long time is are we going to have to live on our sword for generation after generation? And for you know, my father's generation, we understood. I mean, the War of Independence, you know, the 6 Day War, we had to live off our sword. My generation, okay, we lived off our sword. The younger generation was asking, are we going to have to live off on our sword? And here's the thing: Israel has realized that one, yes. Two, we can't use or we can't lean on the how do you say the bamboo stick of the world powers.
Right.
We cannot. I mean, I think there was a biblical reference to that.
Yep.
We cannot kind of put our weight on the world powers, and we will have to defend ourselves. And three, the enemy will have to realize that we can smack him whenever we want.
100%.
And I think those are the things that are going to have to come out of this.
But
war.
the enemy realizing that you can smack them. Look, Hamas, for example. Forget Hamas. Let's not even talk about Hezbollah for just a second. Let's have a conversation about Iran.
Okay.
Iran functions in what I would consider to be a very cowardly way. They refuse to directly engage in warfare with another nation based on the actions of Tehran directly. They don't say we declare war on you, Israel. But what they will do is they will deploy the use of proxies. Don't get me wrong. Listen, you're going to have Khomeini say, death to Israel, we declare war on you, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to get all the ideological nonsense stated. That's not the issue here. The issue is they take their proxies and they deploy their proxies for their nefarious action in order to do what it is that they're actually doing. And that's where it starts to get dark.
So so if we're going to go that way, let's talk about what's going on. Because in the north, in Hezbollah, okay, I think somebody termed it brinkmanship. They're
Yes.
they're
I've never heard that term, but it makes sense.
masters of walking on the brink, making sure
Yep.
that on one hand they don't push over enough for Israel to pull out all the stops. On the other hand, they're doing this. Brinkmanship is what's going on with the Houthis in Yemen right now. Okay, so they fired the long-range missiles at Israel, and it had no impact. They realized that they have
Right.
no impact right there. And I think they actually fired at a Norwegian tanker the day before yesterday. And they're going to be walking along that brinkmanship. And the question is, okay, what will push them over the brink? Or what will push the rest of the world over the brink in order for, closing off a waterway. We did this last week where we were here. Closing off that bottleneck at the Bab el-Mandeb. Okay, the world cannot allow that to happen, because if that happens, that becomes, unless something else happens, and that's going to turn or connect to the next subject we need to talk about, and that's the anti-Semitism. If the world says this is an international waterway, all the ships in the world, one of the basic aspects of world trade is free navigation in international waters. And if the world allows them to close off that international waterway to Israeli shipping and doesn't react the way they would react to closing off the waterway to Norwegian shipping or to American shipping, if they have a separate policy for Israeli shipping from other shipping, then we're down a completely different road. And that's what we're starting to see in other ways. And what happened in the colleges, if you want to go back there, is the anti-Semitism that comes in the separation or the differentiation and the way we react to the Israeli Jewish side and the way we react to the other side. Meaning Jews can have a demonstration and it will be called hate speech. Arabs have a demonstration, it's not called hate speech. Or you can call for the genocide of the Jews, and the how do you say the head of the college is going to wiggle and twist and contextualize it. And if you call for the genocide of the gays, everybody would be up in arms.
They lose their minds.
They lose their minds.
They completely lose their minds, and that's the problem that we're facing right now. The problem that we're facing is we have to get rid of the mindset that says, what can we do to make a better life for these people? Of course we want to make a better life for these people. Of course we want them to be happy. If they're happy, we're happy. If we're happy, they're happy. We want these people to live productive lives. I was raised with stories that my mom used to tell me of the life that she lived in Gaza for a while as a missionary. There were many beautiful things. It was beautiful coastland. My mom used to tell me like it felt like a vacation spot. It was beautiful. But how quickly Islam changed everything.
But what I'm trying to tell the people who are listening to us, when you want to see what really is happening, you have to be on the guard for what I call selective truth.
Yeah,
the minute the truth becomes selective, it is playing a role in the war that we're actually talking about.
100%.
So selective truth about the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, but the minute you selectivize it, then we're talking a different kind of war. Selective truth about how you relate to anti-Israel narratives as opposed to anti-Arab narratives. The minute it becomes selective, then you know that we have a different kind of battle that's going
100%.
on.
100%. And that's why I go back to this thing of we're not going to make life better for people with the understanding that now mind you, let me back this up. We have to make the general assumption that most of these people are Islamic fundamentalists. If they're not, and they just follow Islam because that's what they did and that's what they were raised with, then there's a lot of hope. When I say there's a lot of hope, it's a matter of being able to effectively demonstrate that you're there and you're there to stay and nothing's going to change. And as long as Israel can do that, you will win a lot of.
Okay.
Gaza will feel like one of those Druze villages. It will. Those people will love Israel. The people that are the non-Islamic fundamentalists, they will absolutely learn to love Israel. That's just, it's going to be a straight matter of fact. But the caveat is they are people that are not real practicing Muslims, right?
Okay.
The real Muslims are going to be the ones that are going to never accept this. And it's a very, very true and real issue. And they're satanically inspired. We have to admit that.
I think part of what Satan is using, though, is deception. And there's some guy that's walking around the West Bank and asking Palestinian and all kinds of questions. One of the questions that he asked, I see if I can find the link somewhere. One of the questions he asked is, give me a name of a famous Palestinian from ancient times. I mean, if Palestine has been here for hundreds of years, I mean, you've grown up as a Palestinian, you've studied Palestinian history.
Yeah.
Give me a name of somebody famous from there. And the furthest back that they can go is Yasser Arafat.
Yeah. Arafat wasn't even bad. He was an Egyptian.
Okay. So
a gay Egyptian, too, but that's a whole other story.
One of the things one of the movies I came across and kind of shook me up a little bit this week, I've come across, he says, okay, let's say tomorrow the Palestinians take over. Okay, and Israel gives a Palestinian state.
Meaning, let's pretend that tomorrow they go back to where they were prior to October 7th. This is in Gaza, or this is in
let's say we go
Judea,
back
Samaria.
to where we were prior. Listen to this: prior to June 1967. Okay, let's say all of the West Bank is given over to the Palestinians, including half of Jerusalem. Okay, then what happens? And what they say very clearly, these are young Palestinians, this generation, they say, okay, then we clear out Israel. You see, they don't want, even today, the educated young Palestinians living in the West Bank, living in Ramallah, and it's amazing. He says, no, Israel has to disappear. And he asked them, where were the Israelis going to go? And he says, they should go back to where they came from. And, meaning, what do you mean, where they came from? And then he says to him, wait a minute, but most of the Israelis came from Arab nations. You're going to send them to Iraq? You're going to send them to Egypt? You're going to send them to Libya? Okay? And they don't have an answer for that. They only believe in the destruction of the state of Israel, and nobody really knows. So even the younger generation actually believes in the destruction. So I'm trying to say is the deceit has permeated that culture in such a way that even they know that they can't answer what was Palestinian before 1948.
Yep.
But it doesn't even bother them.
Yep. It's bad. It's bad. So let me play this for you, because this is part of the problem. And this is the brainwashing. It's about a 5-minute video, and I will probably get so mad at certain points I'll end up stopping it. Okay. This is and important that we note this. This is the president of Harvard. Okay. Now, I want to say this because I think it's important to note. I believe that the only reason why this woman is where she is because she's black.
Mr.
This is and I think it's important to note that she is a diversity inclusion pick for Harvard. Harvard is full of super evil people whose whole goal is to brainwash society. Okay? It's a group of a bunch of wealthy elites that don't give a rip about the money that people give them. They don't care about endowments. They don't care about any of that stuff, because people that they've raised up in their schools are embedded within government where they're collecting the money. Can I give you an example of this? Mm-hmm. There's a big old movement right now that says remove all the endowments from Harvard. If they remove the endowments, they're going to lose billions of dollars, right? And there's a lot of prominent Jewish businessmen that are removing their money, which is good, as we should, right? Penn is suffering as a result of this, right? A lot of people conflate Penn State with Penn. They're both two different schools. But let me take it a bit further, right? In Harvard, they're not doing any of that. And one of the reasons why they're not doing any of that is because their mindset is, well, we're going to get that money anyway back from the government. Sure enough, Obama administration just announced, I always say Obama, the Biden administration, the Biden administration announced that they're going to do some ridiculous like $8 billion in loan forgiveness for schools, right? This is all money going to Harvard. This is all money going to the Ivy League schools. That's exactly what's happening here, right? So they don't care if people get rid of the endowments. It's no big deal. I'm getting that money from the government. Who cares? So,
by the way, not only from the government, there is huge amounts of money that have been pumped into these schools from the Middle East, mostly from Qatar.
Oh yeah. Qatar. Ironically enough, which I've been looking into this, Saudi Arabia has pretty much dried up a lot of their money into schools like Harvard. But they're doing that for a different reason. But it is interesting that money is kind of beginning to go away. But look at this. This is the president of Harvard that they're interviewing. It's a congressional hearing. I will say this. The congressional hearing is 5 hours. Okay? It's very worth listening to the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, I did. You're going to get very angry. And you're going to be pretty upset with a lot of the things that you see.
I'm angry and upset as it is. But
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But it is worthwhile looking at.
All right.
Right? Because you learn a lot. You just learn. You learn a lot about your enemy, right? So let's watch this. This is interesting. And if you want to stop me and offer any interjection, please do. I know I'll probably stop a few times because this is not good. Here we go.
Just for 5 minutes.
Dr. Gay, a Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans?
By the way, the reason why she doesn't want to immediately say it's wrong is because she knows where it's going to lead into.
Oh, totally.
She knows where it's going to lead into. If someone called for the mass murder of black people at Harvard, she would not only kick them out of Harvard, she would file police reports. She would seek to throw every single legal whatever she can at them. That's exactly what she would do.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to get cornered in
That's
anything.
right. She knows what's about to happen.
No,
and
she's
she's a
been
very
briefed.
wicked lady. Watch this.
Harvard, is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no
extends-
question. Let me ask you this. You are president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
That type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And it's funny too. I want to point this out. When we talk about intifada, the worst part about what she's doing here is she's saying that speech is the most abhorrent. She won't even admit that it's not just a simple speech variable, that this is a programming. It's a way of life. It is something that is deeply embedded within the hearts of very evil people. She won't even acknowledge that.
So let's start off. Intifada means shake, uprising,
That's
shaking
right, yeah.
off of.
Right.
Okay, basically it was the Arabs trying to shake off the Jewish occupation, the Israeli
That's right.
occupation. But in order to do that, they strapped bombs on themselves and went and blew themselves up on buses inside Israel. And again, this is something that was part of the dynamic. So when you say intifada, you mean blowing up on buses.
Well, and you mean mass murder of Jews. You mean it's all instilling. By the way, and I think that this is important for people to understand, okay? If you think of the word intifada, I just want you to think about this, guys. Everybody that's watching this, if you think about the word intifada, just remember that was David's war.
Yeah.
Okay, just remember
I
that.
was in there.
So that people understand that every single Jew that's alive in Israel today gets asked the question, which war was yours? Which war was yours? Some of them have multiple wars, right? David's war, intifada.
Lebanon. And intifada.
Just understand that. I want everybody to understand that. It's serious.
Yeah, but there's two elements. There's two sides to that. Okay, I was inside Jenin during the second intifada. I mean, putting that in there. But it's also waking up in the morning and saying, wait a minute, am I going to send my children to school on the bus? Because public transportation is very, useful in Israel. And you say, no, the buses are blowing up because, they're strapping bombs on blowing up buses. So, and every time your child is out of the house, you're afraid of the phone call. And you hear a boom somewhere in Jerusalem and the cell system crashes because everybody's calling to see that their loved ones are okay. That's what it means. That's what calling for intifada means, that kind of dynamic.
Here we go.
And what does she say?
Take a listen.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, there is only one solution, intifada revolution, and, quote, globalize the intifada. Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus, yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is...
Again, here's the thing. She's going to say, okay, I don't like it, but I'm not here as what I like. I'm here representing the university.
Yep.
And she cannot say that as a representative of the university, that is not acceptable.
She should and she must, but she won't. And you're right.
Why won't she?
She
Okay,
won't
so
because
here's my
she's
question.
evil.
Here's my question, James. Why won't she? I mean,
She's evil. Because demons are real. That's why. I'm
right.
serious. Why don't we just call it for what it is? It's demonic. Demons are real, and that's why she won't do it. That's why she won't do it. Did you see that Ohio State Capitol building?
no.
Where they have a whole Satan worship thing inside the building?
Really?
No joke. I'll pull up the picture.
Yep.
I'll pull up the picture. It's disgusting. But yeah, we're going in a bad direction here. It's terrible. Take a listen.
is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it
values
is against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We
No,
embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross
And
that
these
barrier?
are the same people who get offended if you use the wrong
Dude,
pronoun.
it's they are the number one suppressors of free speech on any campus.
These are the people
worldwide.
who are not willing. I mean, these are the
Yes.
people who set up rules
Yes.
for trigger
You
warnings.
called I'm a man, but you called me her instead of him, dude. This is ridiculous, and she's holding her feet to the fire. She's saying, "Wait, you mean to tell me?" Well, look, let me rewind it a little bit. Listen to what she does. Listen.
That speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying.
By the way, crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying. So that what she's basically saying is, we'll only do something about it if a Jew dies.
Exactly. And okay, so here's this. James, I'm Jewish. I know. I've been here. I've got what I'm watching here in my bones. A lot of people don't really realize what it means to be Jewish.
Oh yeah.
What it means to be Jewish is knowing that my great-great-grandfather, somebody said this about him somewhere in Eastern Europe. And my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, somebody said this about him in Spain. I mean, we know that at some point the higher-ups, the powers that be, are going to say, oh, hating you or
Yep.
calling to kill you
Yep.
is less than calling to kill somebody else.
It's insane. Calling to kill you is less than refusing to call me a man, even though I was born a woman. Honestly, that's just reality. Look at what continues to happen. This is where she starts to get clarity. It's going to make you sick.
Does that
harassment,
speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When that
You
speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You
Translation. We embrace people calling for the elimination of the Jewish state and of all Jews. We embrace that. That's what she's saying.
Okay, so if they embrace it, then what's next?
Watch what's next.
You and I
Outrageous
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You were aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
As I observed earlier,
Which, by the way, just so you know, if you support Trump, you say that you should vote for him. If you express views that are too extreme with respect to your Christianity, all that, those are all things worthy of getting kicked out of Harvard. So when we talk about the oppression as free speech, they're very good at this. So here we go.
I reject that characterization.
It's the
of our
data shows
campus.
it's true. And isn't it true that Harvard previously rescinded multiple offers of admissions for applicants and accepted freshmen for sharing offensive memes, racist statements, sometimes as young as 16 years old? Did Harvard not rescind those offers of admission?
Yeah, so think about it like this: if you're applying for Harvard and you get accepted, right, and you're getting ready to start at Harvard, and they found a picture where you are standing in with your buddies, and you have a little Nazi symbol that you drew, or that's inappropriate. If you have a little blackface on, or something like that, right? That when you were 16, you didn't even know what those things meant. You just did it, whatever. They'll kick you out for that. For something you did when you were a
So
kid.
if you have a picture, if you're on a shooting range with your dad, kind of firing weapons,
They'll kick
that
you
would
out
be
for
enough?
that. Absolutely. They'll say you're violent. But when you say from the river to the sea,
You're that violent.
it's protected free speech.
Yeah, but here's the thing: they don't even know what river and what sea. Most of them.
They don't understand it. But even Intifada, I mean, they don't even understand that.
Here's
They
the
don't
thing,
understand that in the middle of any type of Intifada, every single one of those people would get eliminated.
Here's the thing, though: she does.
Oh yeah.
She knows. And instead of saying, I know what you're saying and what you're saying is wrong, okay? Or if you have a child that actually, I mean, this is an educational facility. I mean, this is what they're supposed to do. If you have a child that does something that is wrong, even if the child doesn't know it's wrong, it's your job as an educator to explain what's wrong with this.
Yep.
And here she's not only not explaining what's wrong, but she is actually accepting this
Encouraging
behavior.
it, not just accepting it, encouraging it. Look what she goes on to say.
That long predates my time as president.
But you
so I can't
understand
speak.
that Harvard made that decision to rescind those offers of admission.
I have no reason to contradict the facts as you present them.
Correct, because it's a fact. You're also aware that a Winthrop House faculty dean was let go over who he chose to legally represent, correct? That was while you were dean.
That is an incorrect characterization of what transpired.
What's the characterization?
I'm not going to get into details about a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask you this. Will admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or Intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive
it's
speech
hateful,
is
reckless, and
personally abhorrent to me.
And today that no action will be taken. What action will be taken?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies.
So we'll take action when the Jews die.
So
When they kill Jews, we'll take action.
So
Maybe.
I'm willing to accept applications from people who say this. I'm willing to accept applications from people who say this publicly. Okay.
I'll
But-
encourage it on campus. These are campus demonstrations.
So where are the lines of these people? And again, what I'm trying to kind of convey is that, James, we're not surprised.
You want to know where her line is? Listen to where her line is. This'll make you sick.
Including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you we have robust
What
disciplinary
actions have been
processes
taken? I'm not
with
asking.
actions underway.
I'm asking what actions have been taken against
Given-
those students.
Given students' rights to privacy and our obligations under FERPA, I will not say more about any specific cases other than to reiterate that processes are ongoing.
I will just say this. This is where I'm kind of proud of this Congresswoman, because look what she does
She's
next.
not letting her go.
No, and then look what she does next, and I love this. Which, by the way, the president of Penn finally resigned.
Yeah,
That
I
happened,
heard
which
that.
was good news. But watch this.
Do you know what the #1 hate crime in America is?
I know that over the last couple of months, there's been an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, which I understand is the critical topic that we are here to discuss.
That's correct. It is anti-Jewish hate crimes. And Harvard ranks the lowest when it comes to protecting Jewish students. This is why I've called for your resignation, and your testimony today, not being able to answer with moral clarity, speaks volumes. I yield back.
So, by the way, this, you have to understand that you're looking at the tip of the iceberg. You're looking at the top of the system. You're looking at...
I know.
You're looking at, how do you say, the headstone of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Okay? That means that if the head of Harvard publicly like this is weaseling and twisting and snaking around giving an answer, that means that bosses in organizations and in places of employment are not weaseling the way she is.
Bro, it is terrible. This is terrible.
Well, you understand that a lot of people are immigrating to Israel right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, I pointed this out. We did this. We had this conversation with Bibi Netanyahu's brother, right? And matter of fact, it's interesting. We made a short out of this, and I'll find it right now because I think it would be really cool to play. Because his point, what he said here, was completely on point. He was 100% right with what he actually said. And I'll let me find it for you because it is very, very worth it to play for you because it goes into everything that we've been talking about. Absolutely everything that we've been talking about, and it makes perfect sense. Let me find it here.
So, what is the next stage? I mean, all right, I'm an American Jew walking around the streets of Los Angeles. Okay, should I be worried?
Probably. I mean, if they know who you are, yes. I mean, I never thought I would ever see the day where I would say something like that, but it's true. It's not even a question. It's not even a question. It's true.
So who are, James, and this is an interesting question, who are the new anti-Semites? Who's running this? Where is this anti-Semitism stemming from?
I think it's everywhere. It's a plague. It's everywhere. It's not even a, it's a plague. By the way, it was an anti-Semitic movement, I think, a very deeply anti-Semitic movement that tried to put into effect this massive amount of rioting that was going on from the outside in cities like Tel Aviv over the issues that were happening with this judicial reform. I actually think, this is just my opinion, I actually think that if Hamas did jump the gun on the attack that they made, I think they jumped the gun very likely because they thought that the state of Israel
Was weak.
Yeah.
And
they were in the most weakened state.
And we've got, how do you say, polls and actually information that kind of backs that up.
And I believe that. Look at what this is staggering. And I thought it was, the way he put it was good. We made actually a little promo video out of it, and I'll play it. This is Bibi Netanyahu's brother. I interviewed him. It was a real pleasure, by the way. Dr. Ido Netanyahu, he's a great guy.
Very smart.
Big sweetheart and very, very smart guy. Very, very smart guy. This is what he said about that particular issue, about the rioting that was going on in Israel and the whole nationalism. Look at what he said. This is interesting. I'll play this for you guys.
People thought that Israel was crumbling before their very eyes. The country, that's it, it's unraveling. The whole Zionist idea is unraveling. But within hours of October 7th, when the attack started, everything changed. The national sentiment in Zionism was there under the surface all the time. And you can see how these soldiers all came to the army. People who were not even called came to the army. And they're not in Gaza, we'll be fighting Hamas until it's being destroyed. And if necessary, we'll fight in Lebanon without any reservations, understanding that there's no other place for the Jewish people except for the land of Israel. I think the greatest contribution right now, today, is the fact that the country of the Jews is standing up against this threat to the entire world. And if there's one thing that will bring the West to confront this horror of Islam fundamentalism is the national sentiment which will bring about the freedom of these countries.
Okay. Can I add another layer on this?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the purpose, the role, the job, the prophetic reason for the creation of the state of Israel?
Well, I mean, look, if you're talking about a Bible prophecy thing, none of the things that are projected to happen in the last days can happen if there is no state of Israel.
Yeah, but
you can't have the rebuilding of the temple. You can't have any of the stuff that we know that will happen in the last days.
But as a Jew, what is Israel? What is Israel for all the Jews in the world?
Well, I mean, that's a very multifaceted question, right?
I'll give you the down below answer. Okay, for all of the Jews all over the world, Israel is the bomb shelter. Israel is the place.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Israel is, no matter where you live in the world,
Yep.
no matter what Jew you are, Israel was created to be a homeland for the Jewish people, was created to be the place where Jews can be safe. That means even if you decide that you're not going to live there, even if you decide that you're going to get up and move to LA, okay, you always know that there is a place for you to be as a Jew.
But you understand that this goes back to ancient Bible history.
Totally.
When you talk about the Jews, always like this idea, like no matter where you live, there's still always going to be a Jewish homeland. There's that place that you go for safety. When Joshua led the nation of Israel from the area of the Sinai down further north into the land of the Philistines to take the land that had been given to them. What you have to understand is when they went in there to go do it, you got to recognize that there were contingencies of people that did not want to cross over the Jordan. They said the half tribe of Ephraim, Manasseh, the Gadareans didn't want to do it. But what was the statement? The mandate was, hey, you still have to cross over the Jordan with us and fight. And once you're done fighting, if you still want this piece of land that's right here, come and get it. That's fine. But this is your obligation.
I listened to your talk with David TaL also, and one of the things that came up with every generation has the ones that don't want to cross over the Jordan. Every generation has the one who want to be Hellenized Jews, and
Yep.
I'm using the term Hellenized because
It's for a reason.
we're celebrating Hanukkah and the Maccabees revolt in Hanukkah that started off in Modin, by the way, which is where I live today. Was as much against the Jews who had decided that they're buying into the worldwide, how do you say, poison, if you want to put it that way. Okay, we always have these Hellenized Jews, or what David TaL called them, the international Jews. Okay, but always we remembered, okay, ever since Israel was created, to be a place where the Jews could come when it hits
That's
the
right.
fan.
That's right.
Okay, and what I'm trying to say is this: the Jews all over the world are feeling that again. And just to finish this dynamic, because we keep on kind of referring this to what happened before, what happened in let's say in Europe before World War II, and everything. And I'm going to say there's a huge difference between what's going on in the United States and in the Western world today, and what was going on in the Western world, or actually in Germany in the 1930s. And the difference is the state of Israel.
Yep.
The difference is these Jews have a place to go.
Yep.
Okay? That's why this attack on the 7th of October actually was a wake-up call, not only to the Israelis who live in Israel, but as a wake-up call to all Jews all over the world, that the minute it gets a little bit warm and a little bit sticky and a little bit, the first thing that they're going to go and say, wait a minute, where do I go when this hits the fan?
Yeah, no, and by the way, that's completely correct. Your assertion is right. There's so much truth to everything that you're saying, and there's another variable that has to be considered with respect to the Jews, and it's something that a lot of people fail to recognize or fail to consider, and that is the fact that they are the only people on the face of the earth in human history that God gave those types of promises to. Gave them the land, set the land aside for them, made it so where the land would not be blessed. And by the way, can I just back up for a second on the discussion of Hanukkah? People minimize the celebration of Hanukkah. They say that it's kind of superfluous. I actually heard somebody who's a pastor, a very ignorant one, by the way, very uninformed, probably shouldn't be in the ministry, who basically said that Hanukkah is kind of a superfluous pagan celebration. Well, clearly he probably wouldn't even be able to describe what Hanukkah was. He wouldn't know who Judas Maccabees was, wouldn't know anything about the revolt that took place back in that time, doesn't know anything. But probably also doesn't know that Jesus himself celebrated Hanukkah, and the Bible tells us that. No one knows what the Festival of Lights is? Come on.
And
what are we talking about here?
But here's the interesting connection. And again, I've been connecting these in a couple of different ways. Does anybody know what the word Hanukkah means?
Oh, but I promise you, very few.
And Jesus stood on the temple during the feast of Hanukkah. The word Hanukkah means dedication.
Yep.
Okay? And Jesus literally stood on the altar on the side of the hill that we call God's mountain, Moriah, God's teaching place or God's classroom. I like to call Mount Moriah God's classroom. Jesus stood on God's classroom on the day of Hanukkah, which is basically the day of dedication.
100% right.
And he says, I am going to be dedicated here on this hill right here. I mean, I don't know how these profound connections kind of slip through. So yes, Jesus himself celebrated Hanukkah. The Bible translates it the Feast of Lights, but if you open up the Hebrew and translation, it says on the Feast of Hanukkah.
Yeah. The day of dedication, which by the way, there's a when I used to teach textual criticism, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about this, but that was one of the passages we talked about. We talked about how some of the variants in manuscripts are treated very differently based on translations and stuff. It's an interesting conversation, but Hanukkah comes up because someone this started, by the way, many years ago in a Bible college class where I had a student that said Hanukkah wasn't in the Bible, and that's where we actually had to go back and go, you guys have no idea what you're talking about.
Which I can't help it, but connect to the Balagan Connection. We're going to be putting up a movie
on Hanukkah,
about Hanukkah, either today or tomorrow or whatever, whenever we can get this done. So that will be connected to that, and lighting the candles. And the candles actually are the dedication to we call it the Feast of Lights because it is the light banishing the darkness.
Yep. And that, by the way, that video gets released tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you guys will really enjoy that video.
But I need to do something else, James, and we need to get this. I don't know how much time we have left here.
We got some time, and we're also going to take some questions on locals for just a few minutes. But yeah, we got time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Which brings me to this: we're more than 2 months after the events of the 7th of October, and a lot of things have changed. The fighting is kind of fierce. By the way, pray for the soldiers because it's starting to rain. I don't know if anybody understands what it is. I mean, rain turns a hard situation into a miserable situation. I don't know. I mean, we in the Western world kind of live under umbrellas and move from our car to our house. Think about these guys, kids, by the way, not all of them kids, outside in the rain, in the mud, it's just so
100
miserable.
pounds of gear.
And it's so pray for them. I mean, one of the things that my brother's been doing lately has been shipping out boxes of dry underwear and dry socks.
Oh, God bless Joel.
And just amazing how critical that is. But I want to go back to what I'm talking about. There are 137 hostages still in the tunnels in Gaza. These are 137 people who were grabbed from their houses on that morning and pulled into the most horrible ordeal. And we're hearing some of the evidence and some of the stories of those that were released, and how horrific. It's showing 6-year-old children videos of his father being killed, and the kind of weird things. I mean, there's still, we think, sexual abuse going on there, and a lot of things that I'm kind of, and the world has kind of forgotten about this. And the world, I mean, think about 137 Americans were being held hostage somewhere in in a South American kind of conflict. I mean, and nobody's saying anything. So
I got to tell you, this will give you some perspective. I have to do it without getting emotional or crying. It'd be hard not to, but every every day we have different responsibilities around the house that we have to do as men. You know, we're the type of people that, as men that are godly, you know, we're the breadwinners for our homes. You know, we take on certain obligations that we don't allow our wives to take on because, you know, as men we do certain things that just simple things, right? One of those things is Monday nights I take the trash out late at night. Because that's kind of the most convenient time to do it. The trash gets taken out the next day on Tuesday. The trash truck comes the next day on Tuesday or whatever. And my little 2-year-old is in the phase, my 2-year-old girl, she's in the phase where all she wants to do is help. That's like what she wants to do. So she stands at the door. This is the first time she's ever done this. She stands at the door of the house, and we have this big driveway. You go down the driveway, you go around the gate, and then that's where you dump the trash out in the front, whatever. And so she took it upon herself while I was carrying out, because there was probably, 10 bags of trash. As I'm carrying out every bag of trash, she found herself waiting on the porch because she knows she's not allowed to run into the driveway. She knows she's not allowed to run out on the gate in the street. And she's standing there with her, like every bit of strength to try to hold up that bag for her baba. Right. And it was a pretty bad day for me physically. So I was using my mobility scooter to cart the trash around. And so every single time I put a bag of trash in the trash can, I turned around, I spun my little scooter around, and I wish I could show you the picture, but for security reasons, I never will. I wish I could show you the picture that was in my mind and in my heart. I'll show it to you when I pull it off the camera in my house of my little baby with the most eager smile on her face, holding a bag of trash, just excited to help her baba. Right. And I just was thinking last night as I was doing this, like, can you imagine what some of these fathers in Israel, who had their little 2-year-olds taken away? Like what in the world? There's not a dang thing I would not do to save my baby. I don't give a rip. I would burn it all. I would burn it all to the ground if I had to. I don't care what it takes. It's just crazy. And then for people to dehumanize these kids like this and basically say they're inconsequential, forgive me for saying this, shove it up your rears.
My hardest time being here in the States was when they released the hostages the first time. And I'm watching on TV, and you're happy that the hostages were being released. But then you hear the Hamas arguing about we're going to give 4 young people and not 5, and families who got one of their sons back and not the other one. And I'm saying, the worst kind of pictures from the slave auction, and there was I think it was Roots, I think was the name of the show way back.
Yeah, that old movie.
When and you're watching people being sold on an auction block as human beings, and I'm watching 6-year-old, 4-year-old children being sold, and the equivalence that is being made between a 4-year-old and a lady who tried to killed 16 people in the Sbarro. And I'm saying to myself, what kind of world are we living in where these kind of children are being used as pawns in a political arena? And the fact that they're using my kids, it raises a type of, I'm going to say not hatred, but more rage that we all have. I mean, it's all in our DNA. That's our job, to protect these people, to protect these young ones, to protect these children. And look what this enemy has done. And here's the thing. Why doesn't the world understand what that is? Why can't you empathize what you just now did okay, was take this situation that happened in Israel and kind of connected it to your world and your realm. Where are the other people who have children who don't understand what that means? And don't understand why Israel has to make sure that this never happens again, and kind of, how do you say, intellectualize the hostage situation, and these are the ones who kind of say, yeah, it was not good, but I mean, if it was your child dragged by her hair into a hole in Gaza, what would you say to somebody who says to you, well, it's not a good idea, but you have to understand you were wrong, you did this, it's your fault. That's the worst kind of treatment.
Yeah, if that guy did that to my face, it'd get decked. I'm sorry, that it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. But, yeah, I'm wired a different way.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm seeing people, normal people. I'm seeing, the Prime Minister of France. I mean, you're saying, we are against what happened on 7 October.
He's not normal. He's a degenerate animal. We all know that.
The Prime Minister of Canada.
They're all that way. They're degenerate animals.
So how do we relate to these people? How do we relate to the ones who say, okay, she was not, okay, they didn't rape 40 women, they only raped probably about 32. Okay, how does that kind of a conversation, and the fact that people can have that kind of conversation is wacko, which is why, by the way,
let's talk about that for a second, because you're gonna give me one of those today.
I'm gonna give you one of those.
Good. I'm gonna be wearing it on a regular basis. Explain to everybody what that is.
Well, what this is a version of an Israeli dog tag. This is how we wear our dog tags, as opposed to American dog tags, which is basically 2 tags. This is one tag that has a dotted line in the middle that when in the Army, in case of somebody who is fallen in battle, you break it in half, and one half stays with the deceased, and the other half goes to the system so we know what we've lost. In this case, it doesn't have name and serial number, which my regular dog tag has. It has, in Hebrew, it says here, Alev shelanu nishar ba'aza, our heart has stayed in Gaza. And in English, it says, free, bring them all home now, basically. And I think it was Elon Musk who actually went on TV kind of saying that he's going to wear. I'll give you this one because I got another one at home, and we're going to be wearing this until they all come home.
Yep. I'm not taking it off till that happens.
Until I'll come home. And what I need you to understand that Israel as a country, and one of the things that drives me crazy is when they turn it into a political issue. Netanyahu needs to take out the Hamas. No, Netanyahu doesn't need to take out the Hamas. Everybody who has an Israeli passport needs to take out the Hamas.
Yeah, exactly.
Each and every one of us need to get those hostages back. It's not a political issue for us. It's a very deep down and personal issue. And I think that's something that people need to realize, when we're talking about this.
Amen and amen, bro. Amen and amen. Well, guys, listen, we're going to close up in prayer right now, but then we're going to switch right over to locals in just a few minutes, and we're going to take a few questions, and then we're going to wrap it up for the day because we had a long one. This was a long one, so let's pray. Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this time, and thank you for the conversation we've had, Lord. I just pray that you would help us, Lord, to be people who are actionable, Lord, with the things that we see, that we would stand up for righteousness, that we would stand up for your people, Lord, and that, Lord, we'd be people whose hearts and minds, Lord, are transformed by this information that we're seeing and hearing. Help us, Lord, to be truthful and to get this stuff out, Lord, to many. So we love you, and we thank you, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, listen, we love you. Keep fighting the good fight. We'll see you on Locals. We'll take some questions in about 5 minutes.